Good evening, my two little princesses. Are you ready for bed? Are you ready for Daddy's bedtime story? Well, this story is the final one in Princess Shirley and the Island with Master the Parrot and Polly the Sheep. So if you remember last time, Shirley had an encounter with the pirates, and with the help of the wild pigs, she chased them away, and with the help of Master the Parrot, who carried them all and dropped them onto the ship, she was able to get rid of the pirates and make friends with the wild pigs, and also end up with the boats from the ships that the pirates sailed onto the island with. And so now you have an island which is ready to be rescued, because on one side they've got a big help, and on the other side they've set up the fire one more time, the third time, so that if any other ships go past, they can call for help. And you see, now that they'd called for help and a ship had actually came, and it was a pirate ship, they were a bit scared that next time they called there might be another pirate ship, and what are they going to do? Do they have to get ready to fight the next ship if something comes to the beach? So the wild pigs and Master and Polly and Shirley now used to meet every single day to talk about the plans of what they could do if some more pirates came. And they started to take a long time to make all the traps and all the sharp sticks and everything, and all the places that they could go to if there was another lot of pirates. Last time there was 2 boats of pirates, but they still managed to kick them off the island. What happens if there's hundreds of boats come? They can't surely protect the island from that many pirates. So they thought that one day they have to get off the island seriously. And every day they made the island a bit more secure and a bit safer, and they made more traps, and they made it sure that if there were pirates come to get them, they'd have a very, very good chance of surviving. However, day by day, week by week, month by month, Shirley knew that she had to get off the island, even though she'd been making a home, and even though it was probably the safest, most protected island in the whole wide world, and even though she could be attacked by hundreds of pirates, and still a little girl with a little sheep and a parrot and a family of wild pigs could probably get rid of about 200 strong, crazy men. And so, even though she knew that she had to escape, and the day came when she did want to escape, it came the day after a very terrible storm, and the terrible storm had broken the rocks that said help and washed them all into the sea. And on the other side of the island, it had broken all the fire trees that were ready to send a message. And it broke her house, and it broke all the traps and everything that they'd made over the last year to protect themselves from the pirates. In short, the island was devastated. Luckily, the 2 boats that the pirates had come on before were safe, because just after the pirates had come onto the shore and got kicked out, Shirley knew that she had to keep the boats, so she brought them into the jungle and turned them upside down so that they wouldn't get broken. And those were the things, actually, that they had to hide under when the storm came. You see, the storm was very, very fierce, and the lightning and thunder was cracking and breaking trees and everything, and the family of pigs and Shirley and the parrot and Polly the sheep hid under one of the boats all night long. They couldn't sleep because of the noise of the wind and the rain and the lightning and the flashes and the water that was coming under the boats. And so the next day when the sun came up and the lightning and everything had stopped and the clouds had parted and there was a beautiful blue sky, they walked up and looked at all the devastation and all the broken things, and they decided that the next day would be the day they left. So they spent the whole day gathering all the things that they could take, gathering all the things that weren't broken, gathering all the things that they needed to bring with them on the journey to try and get to their uncle's house, the king, the nice king in the nice land, far away from the horrible guy that burnt down her old castle, far away from the reason that her mommy and daddy are probably at the bottom of the ocean. And as they were gathering things, they found the knives and some guns and some food and some clothes, and then they pulled the boats up back onto the island and tied them in the water so that they wouldn't float away that night. And then they made the final fire, and they sat around the fire and talked about all the good things that they'd done, all the adventures, all the things that they'd made, and the storm that they'd survived, and talked about the pirates. And then they started to talk about what they were going to do when they finally found the nice king's land, and all the good things that they would do and where they would go. And Princess Shirley told Parrot and Polly and the pigs, because the pigs were going to come as well, all about the things that they could do, all the food that they could eat, and all the places that they could go that you cannot go to when you're stuck on an island. And they watched the fire slowly burn and go quiet, and then it was dark, and they fell asleep. Although Shirley didn't really sleep much, because she knew the next day is when they were going to leave the island and travel on the sea in the boats and risk everything to get back. The next day they woke up very early and packed the boats really quickly, and they turned around and said goodbye to the island. And Shirley bent down and picked up some sand from the beach and put it in a pocket. That was going to be the memory of where they lived for a very long time. They jumped into the boats and started to paddle. They paddled the boats all the way out. They didn't have a clue which way they were going, and so they just picked one way, and it was the way that the wind was blowing, so that the wind could blow the boats along and they could take some rests from paddling the boat. They knew that if they paddled and paddled, they would get to some place, and they just hoped that they weren't going back to the burnt down castle where Shirley was escaping from. So that's what they did. They rowed and rowed and rowed, and as they were rowing, sometimes the big daddy pig would row, sometimes Polly would row, but most of the time Shirley would row. Master Parrot could not row because he's just a parrot, and he couldn't row with his wings, or he might damage them, break his feathers. However, what Master Parrot could do was fly up into the sky as high as he could fly, and with his very good parrot eyes could see if there was any land coming up, and he could see if they were going back to the terrible place where Shirley escaped from, or they were going to the nice Uncle King's place. They rowed and rowed and rowed, and when it got dark, they took turns in sleeping and rowing, and sleeping and rowing, and then they shared all the food very, very well. And after 3 days in the sea, Parrot spotted the land. He was very far out, and so Shirley asked him, "Does it have a burnt castle? And does it look like this? And does it look like that? Because that's where I came from." And it did not look like that. So they knew at least they weren't going back to the terrible place where they escaped from. And she'd never been to the uncle's place before, in this new, nice land. She'd only heard the stories about the purple castle and the little mountains all around. And so she said to the parrot as they got closer, "Next time you fly up, can you see? Tell me what colour the castle is." And he flew back down. He said, "It's a purple castle." And so they knew that they were going to the nice place. And so that's what made them row faster and faster, and they kept rowing without stop. They made sure to drink enough water, and they had just enough food left to get them there. The next day they arrived onto the beach, and out came lots of soldiers. They marched down to the beach with their big swords and guns and everything, and Shirley quickly explained to them who she was and what had happened and why she was there, and how it had been such a long time since anybody had heard from her. And she told them to go and tell the king, and that's what they did. They brought Shirley and the pigs and the parrot and the sheep up to the purple castle to meet the king, her uncle. Her uncle, who had heard all the story before she arrived, ran outside with the queen to meet Shirley and give her such a big hug. And she said, "Come with me, young princess." And the king, her uncle, took Shirley all the way back to where the king was living, and he opened the big door, and there, inside the living room of the castle, was Shirley's mom, and Shirley's dad, and her auntie. They were all alive. That's right. Shirley ran and gave her Mummy and Daddy such a big hug, and Mummy and Daddy were crying because they thought Shirley was dead, and Shirley thought Mummy and Daddy were dead, but they were alive. What had happened was the Mum and Dad had drifted to another island and managed to escape back to the uncle's country. But Shirley, well, they thought she was dead and gone under the water, but she wasn't. And so they were so happy to be reunited finally. And that is the end of the story of how Shirley got off the island, and they lived happily ever after. The end.